If that sword moves, everything your academy believes will become a lie. Those words echoed through the Hall of Ancient Relics, just as our combat history class gathered beneath towering crystal ceilings, and every alien cadet laughed because we assumed our instructor was trying to make old museum artifacts sound exciting. My name is Commander Lasaravan, and before that morning I believed humans were persistent, adaptable, and hopelessly average beside the civilizations that ruled the galaxy. The newest exchange cadet from Earth certainly did not challenge that opinion. Lucas Hayes was a white human male wearing an ordinary academy uniform without medals or distinguished markings. He spoke little, observed everything, and carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who never felt the need to impress anyone. While the rest of the class admired glowing energy weapons, legendary plasma spears, and ceremonial blades recovered from forgotten civilizations, Lucas slowly wandered toward the oldest exhibit in the museum. Inside a transparent containment field rested a weathered steel sword so ancient that historians no longer knew who had forged it. According to Academy tradition, countless commanders, scholars, and champions had attempted to identify its owner without success. Lucas stopped less than 3 feet away, studied the worn leather grip for several silent moments, then asked in a calm voice that somehow carried across the entire chamber, "Why is my sword here?" Laughter immediately erupted from every direction. Several cadets exchanged amused looks, while one loudly joked that humans claimed anything old because they had run out of new inventions. Even I allowed myself a small smile. Then the impossible happened. Without a warning tone, without a command, and without any visible mechanical movement, the containment field surrounding the sword disappeared. Every museum light instantly dimmed before emergency beacons flooded the hall with flashing amber signals. Ancient scanners hidden behind the walls awakened after centuries of silence. Before anyone managed to move, the sword slowly lifted from its display and floated through the air as if guided by an invisible hand. Hundreds of cadets watched in complete silence while the blade crossed the museum until it stopped directly in front of Lucas, hovering perfectly still with its hilt turned toward him. Security doors sealed throughout the building as automated defense systems activated around the exhibit, but none of the drones targeted the human. Instead, every sensor focused on the sword itself. The central archive display suddenly illuminated with symbols no modern database recognized before translating them into Imperial Standard. Original ownership confirmed. Authorization accepted. Historical archive ready. The laughter vanished as quickly as it had begun. Our instructor stared at the projection without speaking while every security officer reaching the museum froze in disbelief. Lucas looked at the floating sword with quiet curiosity rather than excitement. "Has it always waited here?" he asked softly. Before anyone answered, the Academy's strongest senior cadet stepped into the open demonstration circle with a confident grin. He was famous for defeating every challenger during advanced combat examinations, and clearly refused to believe an ordinary human deserved the attention of an ancient relic. "Enough museum tricks," the alien declared. "If the sword knows you, prove that you deserve it." Without waiting for permission, he activated a standard training weapon and assumed a formal combat stance. The surrounding students immediately cleared the floor, eager to witness the human embarrass himself. Lucas glanced respectfully toward our instructor first. "May I accept?" The instructor hesitated before reluctantly nodding. "Training rules only." Lucas stepped into the circle carrying nothing at all. The alien attacked with impressive speed, but the human did not meet force with force. Instead, Lucas calmly shifted one step at the last possible instant, gently redirected the practice weapon with an open hand, and allowed the alien's own momentum to carry him beyond the marked training boundary. The arena sensors immediately ended the evaluation. Official result: human victory. The entire exchange lasted only seconds. Lucas neither celebrated nor mocked his opponent. He simply turned back toward the floating sword as though the duel had been the least interesting thing to happen that morning. And standing among the silent crowd, I realized the greatest mystery inside our academy was no longer the ancient weapon. It was the quiet human who had somehow convinced it to come home. The academy remained under complete lockdown after the impossible events inside the Hall of Ancient Relics, but the greatest surprise was not the security response. It was the behavior of Lucas Hayes. while every instructor, officer, and historian rushed toward the floating sword with growing urgency. The human calmly stepped backward, as if the ancient weapon belonged exactly where it was. He never reached for the hilt. He simply watched in thoughtful silence. That single decision unsettled me more than the sword recognizing him. Anyone seeking power would have claimed it immediately. Lucas behaved like someone greeting an old memory instead of discovering a priceless treasure. Within minutes, the Academy's highest military authority arrived. High Marshal Kalen Dre entered the museum surrounded by security specialists carrying portable archive scanners and containment equipment. He ignored the nervous cadets and walked directly toward the central display terminal. "Verify ownership authorization," he ordered. The museum intelligence immediately complied. Ancient identification sequence complete. Original ownership confirmed. Transfer authorization denied. Every technician attempted a different access method. Emergency administrator codes failed. Historical override protocols failed. Even military command authorization produced the same response. Original ownership cannot be replaced. The silence inside the museum became almost unbearable. High Marshal Dre slowly turned toward Lucas. "Who taught you about that sword?" Lucas answered honestly. "Nobody. I only recognized the stitching on the grip." Several historians exchanged confused looks. "The stitching," one repeated. Lucas nodded. "It matches the way my grandfather repaired old leather tools on Earth. The pattern is almost identical." Before anyone could ask another question, a confident voice interrupted the investigation. "Coincidence proves nothing." The speaker was Varek Sol, the Academy's highest-ranked alien weapons specialist and the undefeated champion of advanced tactical examinations. Unlike the cadet who had challenged Lucas earlier, Varek carried himself with complete discipline rather than arrogance. "History cannot be rewritten because one human noticed an old repair," he said calmly. "Allow an official Academy evaluation." High Marshal Dre considered the request before giving a brief nod. Approved. Within moments, the museum floor transformed into a certified training arena as holographic barriers surrounded the exhibition chamber. Varek selected a regulation plasma spear from the Academy equipment station. Lucas walked to the opposite rack and quietly chose a plain composite practice staff with visible signs of years of use. Then he surprised everyone again. He removed the tactical prediction band from his wrist and placed it outside the arena. I looked at him in disbelief. Every Academy student depended upon those devices during advanced evaluations. One instructor immediately questioned him. "Your tactical monitor increases reaction accuracy. Why remove it?" Lucas smiled politely. "Because it tells me what already happened. I would rather watch what happens next." The evaluation began. Varek advanced with remarkable control, never wasting movement and constantly adjusting his distance. His spear flowed through precise combinations that every combat class studied for months. Lucas never matched his speed. Instead, he quietly observed Varek's shoulders, breathing, and foot placement while taking short, balanced steps that seemed almost effortless. Several exchanges passed without either competitor gaining an advantage. Then I noticed something impossible. Lucas was moving before the spear changed direction, as though he understood the intention behind every attack before it began. Varek increased his pace, altering rhythm and angle with impressive skill, but the human calmly stepped inside the final movement, redirected the shaft with one smooth motion, and lightly touched the center of Varek's training armor using the end of the practice staff. The arena immediately announced the result. Official evaluation complete. Human victory. Contact achieved in 1.9 seconds after engagement. Tactical prediction unavailable. Unable to generate reliable combat model. No applause followed. No one could explain why the Academy's prediction systems had completely failed against one quiet human carrying the simplest weapon available. Lucas calmly picked up his tactical band, secured it around his wrist again, and looked toward the floating sword. "People decide before they move," he said softly. "You only have to notice when the decision happens." Standing among the silent instructors, I finally began questioning something far more important than the sword itself. Perhaps the greatest secret hidden inside our Academy had never been an ancient weapon at all. Perhaps it was the forgotten way humans had always learned to see the world. The archive did not wait for permission. Less than 10 minutes after the official evaluation ended, Every display throughout the academy flickered at exactly the same moment. Hallway maps disappeared. Training schedules vanished. Even navigation systems paused before a single unfamiliar symbol slowly appeared across every screen. I had spent my entire career studying military history, yet I had never seen that emblem before. It resembled a simple compass surrounded by 8 stars, elegant enough to appear almost ordinary until the Central Archive announced a message that instantly silenced the entire academy. Historical Archive 7 restored. Original human expedition records available. Authorized observer detected. Every instructor looked toward Lucas Hayes. He looked just as surprised as everyone else. I did not activate anything, he said quietly. No one accused him of lying because every security recording confirmed he had not touched a single control panel. High Marshal Kalen Dre immediately ordered the archive sealed, but the command arrived too late. Hidden elevators opened beneath the museum floor, revealing a chamber that had remained untouched for centuries. I accompanied the investigation team as both historian and witness, uncertain whether I was walking into the greatest discovery of my career or the greatest misunderstanding in academy history. The underground chamber looked nothing like the advanced technology surrounding it. The walls were built from smooth stone instead of polished alloy. Metal shelves lined the room with remarkable simplicity, holding carefully preserved tools, journals, and mechanical devices that required no energy cells. Lucas slowly walked forward without speaking. His eyes drifted across the room until they rested on a compact machine no larger than a travel case. One side contained a rotating cooling fan that emitted the faintest rhythmic vibration. Everyone ignored it because the sound was almost impossible to notice beneath the archive's ventilation systems. Lucas did not. He stepped closer and tilted his head slightly. "The fan is slowing down every 12 rotations," he murmured. One engineer frowned. "That system has been inactive for centuries." Lucas pointed toward the machine. "Then why is it still trying to cool something?" Before anyone answered, another announcement echoed through the chamber. Archive Defense Protocol engaged. Evaluation unit preparing for activation. From the far wall emerged a polished training drone unlike anything currently used by the Academy. It carried no visible weapons, only adaptive movement systems designed to analyze every opponent before responding with equal precision. High Marshal Dre ordered everyone to remain behind the safety markers. This unit was designed to evaluate whoever entered the archive, he explained. Observe only. The drone approached Lucas with smooth mechanical balance and projected a simple message. Demonstrate authorized competency. The evaluation began without hostility. The machine adjusted to every movement Lucas made, matching his pace with flawless accuracy. Several instructors quietly admired the extraordinary engineering as the drone predicted each step almost instantly. I expected another long tactical exchange, but Lucas hardly looked at the machine itself. Instead, his attention remained fixed on the small cooling unit behind it. The vibration he had noticed earlier was becoming stronger. Every 12th rotation created a brief pulse that echoed through the floor. Lucas smiled slightly. "It is overheating," he whispered. "Not the drone. The controller." Before the machine completed its next adjustment, Lucas calmly walked 3 steps to the side, reached a maintenance panel built into the stone wall, and pressed a simple mechanical release lever that none of us had even noticed. The cooling system immediately stabilized. The drone froze in place, lowered its arms, and projected a completely different message. Environmental awareness confirmed. Evaluation complete. Authorized methodology recognized. Human expedition protocol accepted. Complete silence filled the archive. No combat algorithm had been defeated. No machine had been damaged. Lucas had simply realized the test had never been about overcoming the drone at all. It had always been about noticing the overlooked detail supporting the entire system. As ancient lights gradually illuminated the forgotten chamber, I felt something inside my understanding quietly shift. We had spent generations teaching ourselves to observe extraordinary things. Humans, it seemed, had mastered the ordinary first. The discovery beneath the academy spread faster than any official announcement could contain it. By sunrise the next morning, every training hall echoed with whispered theories, but none of them mattered because High Marshal Kalen Dre made a single decision that ended every argument. Lucas Hayes would undergo the Academy's highest practical evaluation before the Senior Command Council. No examinations. No historians. No computer analysis. Only one instructor whose record had remained unmatched for nearly 3 decades. I had watched instructor Seraphine Kaur teach generations of elite officers, and I had never seen her lose control of a training arena. She believed discipline could solve every problem, and the entire academy believed she was right. The gravity arena slowly awakened as hundreds of cadets filled the observation galleries. Massive projectors surrounded the circular floor while adjustable gravity fields shimmered across the polished surface. Every participant knew the environment itself would constantly change during the evaluation. Lucas entered first carrying the same simple practice staff he had selected the previous day. Instructor Kaur stepped onto the opposite side with 2 elegant training blades balanced comfortably in her hands. She greeted Lucas with complete respect instead of skepticism. "You have surprised everyone," she said. "Now show us whether your victories were skill or coincidence." Lucas returned a polite nod. "I will do my best." The arena's signal sounded, and the gravity field immediately shifted. Weight increased, then relaxed, then changed direction by several degrees, forcing every movement to require constant adjustment. Instructor Kaur adapted instantly, advancing with remarkable balance as her twin blades flowed through controlled patterns that challenged timing rather than strength. Lucas refused to rush. He never attempted to overpower her technique. Instead, he quietly studied the changing floor, the movement of suspended dust drifting through the light, and the subtle delay between each gravity adjustment. I realized he was observing the arena itself before fully engaging his opponent. Instructor Kaur increased her pace, combining precise footwork with carefully measured attacks designed to limit his options. Lucas retreated only when necessary, allowing each gravity shift to carry him exactly where he intended to go. Several instructors beside me commented that he seemed unusually fortunate, but fortune could not explain why he always occupied the safest position a fraction of a second before the environment changed again. Then the pattern became clear. Every gravity pulse created a slight movement in the loose training banners suspended around the arena walls. Lucas had noticed the banners reacting before the field generators completed each transition. He was reading the room itself. Instructor Kaur launched one final sequence that would normally corner any cadet against the arena boundary. Instead of resisting, Lucas calmly stepped into the next gravity transition just as the banners changed direction. The altered momentum carried both competitors into new positions, but only Lucas had expected it. He lightly redirected one practice blade with his staff, took a single balanced step, and gently touched the center of Instructor Kaur's training vest before immediately lowering his weapon. The arena lights turned blue. Official evaluation complete. Human victory. Perfect environmental adaptation recorded. No one spoke for several long moments. Instructor Kaur looked at Lucas, smiled with genuine admiration, and offered a respectful salute. "You never fought me," she said quietly. "You fought the conditions, and once you understood them, I became part of the conditions." Lucas lowered his staff and answered with the same calm humility he had shown since arriving at the academy. "Every place teaches you how to move if you watch long enough." High Marshal Dre slowly rose from his observation seat, his expression more thoughtful than triumphant. Without addressing the audience, he walked toward a security door that had remained sealed throughout the evaluation and entered a personal authorization sequence known only to senior command. Heavy mechanisms echoed beneath the arena floor as an ancient passage hidden for generations began opening below us. Turning toward Lucas, the High Marshal spoke only one sentence. "It is time for you to see what has been waiting beneath this academy longer than any of us have been alive." The passage beneath the arena descended farther than any map of the academy had ever shown, and with every step the polished architecture of the modern institution slowly disappeared behind rough stone walls illuminated by warm white lights that still functioned after countless generations. High Marshal Kalen Dre walked in silence at the front while I remained only a few steps behind Lucas Hayes, watching the human study every detail around him with the same patient curiosity that had already changed everything we believed about our own history. He never hurried. He never reached toward the ancient sword that continued floating beside him as though it already knew exactly where it belonged. Eventually, the corridor opened into an immense, circular vault unlike anything preserved in the Academy archives. There were no grand statues celebrating military victories and no displays honoring famous commanders. Instead, the chamber contained simple workbenches, mechanical tools, handwritten journals sealed beneath crystal covers, and shelves filled with carefully organized equipment designed to repair rather than destroy. At the center stood a plain stone pedestal. As Lucas approached, the floating sword gently settled into a narrow groove carved into its surface with perfect precision. The instant the blade touched the stone, the entire chamber awakened. Hidden lights illuminated symbols across the walls while dormant projectors slowly filled the room with thousands of glowing stars connected by delicate lines stretching across the galaxy. A calm human voice echoed through the vault. Archive restoration complete. Welcome home. None of us moved. The voice continued with quiet confidence instead of dramatic ceremony. If you are hearing this, then someone finally remembered that exploration begins with observation. An image gradually formed above the pedestal, revealing a human explorer wearing practical clothing instead of ceremonial armor. His expression carried neither pride nor regret, only calm determination. Lucas stared at the projection before quietly stepping closer. His eyes rested on the leather wrapping around the explorer's utility belt. It matched the stitching pattern he had recognized on the sword. My grandfather repaired old equipment exactly like that, Lucas whispered. He said the pattern had been in our family longer than anyone could remember. The projection responded as though expecting the observation. Families preserve habits longer than civilizations preserve records. The words sent a ripple of silence through every officer inside the vault. Then another system activated without warning. Ancient security protocols interpreted the restored archive as an incomplete evaluation and released 3 compact Guardian machines from concealed compartments along the chamber wall. They were smaller than the adaptive drone Lucas had already faced, but moved with remarkable coordination, positioning themselves to block every direct path toward the pedestal. High Marshal Dre instinctively stepped forward before Lucas gently raised one hand. Please wait, he said. The machines advanced with synchronized precision, constantly adjusting their spacing to eliminate obvious openings. Lucas watched them for several seconds without taking a defensive stance. Instead, he slowly looked upward. Narrow maintenance rails crossed the ceiling above the chamber, and tiny indicator lights flashed in a repeating sequence. He smiled almost immediately. Rather than challenging the Guardians, he calmly walked toward a narrow service walkway that none of us had even noticed because it appeared too insignificant to matter. The machines instantly repositioned to intercept him, but in doing so they crossed directly beneath the maintenance rails. Lucas reached a simple manual control mounted on the wall and pulled it downward. Overhead transport hooks descended for routine equipment maintenance exactly as they had been designed centuries earlier. The Guardian machines immediately halted to avoid interfering with the automated service cycle. Their sensors flashed green before a clear announcement echoed through the vault. Resource preservation prioritized. Maintenance pathway correctly identified. Guardian evaluation complete. Authorization confirmed. The machines quietly returned to their hidden compartments without a single strike being exchanged. I finally understood why every challenge continued ending the same way. Lucas never searched for the fastest solution or the strongest response. He searched for the original purpose behind everything he encountered. As the star map expanded across the ceiling, revealing ancient exploration routes spreading far beyond modern territory, the human recording spoke one final sentence before fading into silence. Those who only train to win battles will eventually forget how to build the future. Those who keep asking why will always find the next path. By the time we returned from the hidden vault, the Academy was no longer trying to hide the discovery. Every public display across the campus projected fragments of the restored archive, revealing star charts, engineering sketches, expedition journals, and forgotten Academy records that no modern historian had ever cataloged. Cadets stopped in the middle of corridors simply to stare at information that had been buried for centuries. Some celebrated the discovery, while others questioned its authenticity, but the evidence continued growing with every restored file. I watched Lucas Hayes carefully during the confusion. He He did not behave like someone who had uncovered the greatest historical revelation in our civilization. Instead, he quietly helped technicians organize recovered equipment and answered every question with remarkable patience. That humility confused many of us even more than his victories. Before the Academy leadership could complete their official announcement, another unexpected challenge emerged. Varric Sol stepped into the central training courtyard where hundreds of students had gathered around the newly restored archive displays. His expression no longer carried disbelief. It carried determination. He respectfully saluted Lucas before speaking. "I challenged you because I believe the Academy had made a mistake. I now believe history may have judged humans unfairly. I request one final evaluation, not to disprove you, to understand you." The crowd immediately fell silent. Lucas returned the salute without hesitation. "If learning is the goal, then I accept." A circular practice field formed as the Academy projected standard safety boundaries across the courtyard. Varric again selected his trusted plasma spear, while Lucas chose the same simple practice staff that had accompanied him through every previous evaluation. There were no dramatic speeches and no cheering audience. Only quiet anticipation. The signal sounded, and both competitors began moving with measured control. Varric's technique had clearly evolved since their previous encounter. He no longer relied upon rapid combinations or overwhelming pressure. Instead, he patiently adjusted his position, searching for opportunities while respecting every movement Lucas made. For the first time, I realized the human had changed his opponent without ever trying to. Lucas responded with equal patience. Neither competitor hurried toward victory. They circled across the training field, each step revealing another layer of tactical awareness. Then I noticed something subtle. Lucas was not watching Varric's weapon. He was watching the distance between nearby support columns surrounding the courtyard. Every few seconds, sunlight shifted through the open roof, creating narrow bands of light that slowly crossed the practice area. Lucas quietly aligned himself with those changing shadows until Varric instinctively moved into a position where one support column briefly blocked his view of the human's lower body. It lasted less than a second, yet Lucas had clearly planned for that exact moment. He calmly stepped through the temporary visual blind spot, redirected the training spear with gentle precision, and lightly touched Varric's shoulder using the end of his practice staff before immediately taking a respectful step backward. The evaluation system confirmed another human victory, but what happened next surprised me even more. Varric smiled, lowered his spear, and laughed softly. "You never trapped me," he admitted. "You simply waited until the environment asked me to make the wrong choice." Lucas nodded. "Most places give you information if you stop trying to control everything." Around us, the restored archive continued unlocking additional records. Ancient exploration routes spread across enormous holographic star maps, extending far beyond the borders recognized by modern civilization. Entire regions we believed had been discovered by later empires now carried human expedition markers dating back centuries before our oldest official records. The realization settled over the Academy with quiet certainty. The forgotten explorers had not left behind legends about superior weapons or impossible strength. They had left behind a way of thinking that transformed every obstacle into another lesson. Standing beside Lucas as students silently absorbed that truth, I understood why every challenge had ended the same way. Humans did not become extraordinary because they always had the best answers. They became extraordinary because they never stopped asking better questions. The restored archives transformed the Academy faster than any victory ever could. Classrooms that had spent generations teaching carefully preserved legends now displayed verified expedition records beside them, forcing instructors to compare accepted history with newly recovered evidence. No one could ignore the changes because the ancient systems continued authenticating every document they revealed. Yet High Marshal Kalen Dre understood that history alone would never convince the military leadership of the galaxy. They needed proof that the forgotten human methods still worked under modern conditions. 3 days after the archive restoration, every cadet assembled inside the Grand Evaluation Complex for what became the largest practical examination in Academy history. The challenge was simple in description, but nearly impossible in execution. Lucas Hayes would face a continuous sequence of evaluations designed by the senior instructors themselves. Every arena, Every environmental condition and every tactical system would change without warning. For instructors from different combat disciplines stood ready, while 6 advanced adaptive drones waited behind reinforced launch doors. Even experienced officers admitted they had never witnessed a test of this scale. Lucas entered the arena carrying the same familiar practice staff. Several cadets whispered that he should finally use the ancient sword, but he quietly left it resting inside the secure historical vault. The lesson matters more than the relic, he explained before the examination began. Those words lingered in my thoughts as the first instructor stepped forward. Instead of rushing into direct competition, Lucas spent several silent moments observing the enormous arena. He looked at the ventilation currents, the overhead lighting, the spacing between maintenance panels, and even the reflections across the polished floor. Only after he finished studying the environment did he acknowledge his first opponent. The signal sounded. The opening evaluation ended almost before anyone realized it had begun. Lucas gently redirected the instructor's movement toward an area where the changing floor surface naturally reduced available footing, allowing the instructor to lose balance without force. The second instructor entered immediately, specializing in long-range positioning. Lucas calmly adjusted to the new challenge by using support columns to interrupt predictable movement patterns until another clean evaluation ended in his favor. The third and fourth instructors attempted entirely different tactical approaches, yet every solution Lucas found relied upon the environment instead of overwhelming skill. Then the launch doors opened. 6 adaptive drones entered the arena simultaneously, spreading across the floor with perfect coordination. Their shared processing network constantly exchanged information, allowing each machine to predict openings created by the others. The observation galleries grew completely silent because no cadet had ever defeated more than 2 synchronized drones during training. Lucas remained perfectly calm. He watched their formation for several seconds before smiling almost imperceptibly. Rather than confronting the machines directly, he began walking through the arena at an unhurried pace, occasionally changing direction for reasons none of us understood. The drones instantly adjusted, maintaining ideal spacing while attempting to surround him. Then something unexpected happened. Lucas guided the entire formation toward a narrow maintenance corridor where structural support beams interrupted direct communication between opposite sides of the arena. The synchronized machines continued following their original coordination model even after portions of the network briefly lost uninterrupted sensor contact. Small timing differences appeared between individual drones. Lucas never touched a single machine. He simply continued moving until the drones repeatedly repositioned to compensate for one another. Within moments, they had created an endless cycle of corrections, each adjustment triggering another unnecessary response from the rest of the formation. Finally, the central control system suspended the entire exercise. Coordination instability detected. Evaluation concluded. Human tactical objective achieved. The drones powered down where they stood, defeated not through damage but through their own dependence on perfect coordination. I looked around the arena and realized every instructor was smiling. They had not witnessed the failure of advanced technology. They had witnessed the success of a forgotten philosophy. Lucas had never attempted to outthink 6 machines individually. He had simply understood how the system itself expected the world to behave, then quietly invited it to make the wrong decision. As applause slowly filled the grand evaluation complex, I understood that our academy was no longer teaching one human how to become a better cadet. One human was teaching an entire academy how to see differently. The academy no longer resembled the institution where Lucas Hayes had first arrived. Training halls that once displayed only the achievements of modern civilizations now stood beside restored human expedition records, and every cadet who walked those corridors found themselves questioning assumptions that had existed for generations. Then the final archive unlocked. Without warning, every holographic display across the campus merged into a single projection that illuminated the central assembly hall. A blueprint slowly emerged, layer by layer, revealing the original foundation beneath the academy itself. Gasps echoed through the chamber as the modern structure faded from the projection, exposing an older design hidden beneath every renovation. The words that appeared next changed everything. Original Expedition Academy, constructed for observation before combat. The room fell completely silent. I had spent years teaching military history inside those walls, yet I had never known we were standing inside a place created by human explorers long before our civilization claimed it. High Marshal Kalen Dre ordered the deepest level opened for the first time since the archive restoration. Hundreds of officers, instructors, historians, and cadets followed the descending passage until we entered an enormous underground training ground preserved almost exactly as its builders had left it. There were no energy barriers, no automated scoring systems, and no advanced tactical computers. Instead, simple stone markers outlined practice lanes while mechanical training devices rested quietly beside carefully maintained observation platforms. Every feature appeared intentionally uncomplicated. A faded inscription carved into the entrance immediately caught Lucas's attention. He gently brushed centuries of dust from the stone before reading the words aloud. Understand the place before you understand the opponent. No one spoke because every challenge he had overcome suddenly made perfect sense. Before the gathering could absorb the discovery, a final academy evaluation automatically activated. 4 elite instructors entered the ancient arena together, representing different combat disciplines and generations of tactical experience. Above them, restored archive systems projected a brief instruction. Demonstrate understanding worthy of the original Expedition Academy. The instructors respectfully saluted Lucas, and he returned the gesture with his familiar calm expression. Once again, he carried only the same simple practice staff. The evaluation began without fanfare. The instructors spread across the arena with careful coordination, attempting to guide Lucas toward the center where every escape route appeared limited. Instead of reacting immediately, Lucas slowly walked across the weathered stone floor, occasionally glancing toward drainage channels, support pillars, and the position of sunlight entering through narrow openings high above the chamber. Several spectators whispered in confusion, believing he was delaying the inevitable. Then the instructors advanced together. Lucas moved only a few careful steps, allowing each instructor to adjust position naturally. Without realizing it, they gradually occupied areas where the uneven stone pathways subtly restricted coordinated movement. The ancient builders had intentionally designed the arena to reward awareness rather than speed. Every support pillar interrupted sight lines at slightly different angles, making perfect teamwork impossible unless competitors understood the architecture. Lucas quietly guided the instructors into those overlooked limitations until each adjustment created another small opening. Finally, with one smooth sequence of balanced movements, he gently redirected a practice weapon, stepped between 2 converging instructors, lightly touched the remaining pair with the end of his staff, and calmly walked clear before anyone fully understood what had happened. The restored archive immediately announced the result. Original expedition methodology verified. Evaluation complete. The 4 instructors lowered their training weapons and smiled with genuine respect. None of them had been outmatched by superior strength. They had simply overlooked the lesson built into the arena itself. As the ancient chamber gradually filled with warm light, additional inscriptions illuminated across the surrounding walls. They did not celebrate famous victories or legendary warriors. Instead, they honored explorers, builders, teachers, engineers, and students who had learned to observe before acting. Standing beside Lucas, I finally understood the greatest revelation hidden beneath our academy. The first human explorers had never created this place to produce unbeatable fighters. They had created it to produce people who would never stop learning, and that lesson had quietly survived long after every other record had been forgotten. The official dedication ceremony took place exactly 1 week after the final archive completed its restoration, but the atmosphere inside the academy felt completely different from the institution I had known for most of my career. The restored expedition records had been verified by independent historians from across the galaxy. Every structural analysis confirmed that the oldest foundations beneath the academy matched the recovered human blueprints, and no credible challenge remained. The truth had survived because ordinary people had quietly preserved it long after great civilizations forgot it. High Marshal Kalen Dre stood before thousands of cadets, instructors, scholars, and visiting commanders as the ancient sword rested once again upon its original stone pedestal without barriers or containment fields. Today, he announced, We are not rewriting history. We are finally reading it correctly. The audience remained silent, not from doubt, but from respect. Lucas Hayes stood, several steps behind the High Marshal, wearing the same simple academy uniform he had worn on the day everything began. He had refused every ceremonial title offered to him, insisting that he was still only a student. Somehow that decision impressed everyone even more than his victories. As the dedication concluded, one final visitor stepped into the original expedition arena beneath the academy. Commander Talon Ross was widely recognized as one of the most respected tactical instructors in the neighboring star systems, and he had traveled specifically to witness the restored academy for himself. He respectfully saluted High Marshal Dre before turning toward Lucas. "I did not come to challenge your history," he said with calm honesty. "I came to understand the methods that created it. Will you grant me one evaluation?" Lucas smiled politely and nodded. "As long as we both learn something." The original stone arena required no activation. It had always been ready. Commander Ross selected a regulation practice weapon, while Lucas once again carried his familiar staff. There were no spectators cheering for either side. Everyone simply watched with quiet anticipation. The evaluation began with slow, deliberate movement as both competitors carefully studied one another. Commander Ross displayed extraordinary discipline, refusing to commit to obvious opportunities and patiently adjusting his position after every exchange. For several minutes, neither participant attempted anything dramatic. Then Lucas gradually guided their movement toward the eastern side of the arena, where the afternoon sunlight entered through the restored ceiling openings. The changing light reflected softly across the polished stone floor, creating subtle visual differences that were almost impossible to notice unless someone deliberately searched for them. Lucas quietly stopped moving. Commander Ross looked around the arena, then lowered his practice weapon before a final exchange could even begin. A warm smile crossed his face. "I understand," he said. "You already won the moment I stopped observing the place and started focusing only on you." The evaluation system recorded a voluntary conclusion, but no one considered it an unfinished contest. Commander Ross stepped forward and offered Lucas a respectful handshake. "Your greatest skill is not combat," he admitted. "It is reminding everyone else to pay attention." As the gathering slowly dispersed, the restored archive illuminated one final inscription above the ancient pedestal. "Knowledge grows when it is shared." I stood there for a long time after everyone else had left, watching Lucas quietly help museum technicians organize historical displays instead of accepting congratulations. The sword no longer floated through the air because it had finally returned to the place where it belonged. Strangely, that seemed completely appropriate. The true legacy hidden beneath our academy had never been an extraordinary weapon or an unbeatable fighting style. It was a simple belief that every mystery deserved another question, every challenge deserved careful observation, and every generation should leave the next one a better path than the one it inherited. Before Lucas Hayes arrived, I believed humans survived because they adapted. After everything I had witnessed, I finally understood the deeper truth. Humans adapted because they never believed they had already learned enough, and that quiet habit had changed the history of an entire galaxy without ever asking for recognition.